Welcome to the show. I'm James.
Puis David.
Oh, I'm Riley.
And today we're discussing Wes Anderson's French Dispatch. We'll laugh, we'll argue, we might get a little too into it, but at the end of the day, they're just movies.
I don't read my mother's spoiler alerts.
I had no idea
next
you were
week,
speaking French there. That's great.
He's French. Next week we're going to do Spider-Man 2. Not Marvel Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2, the Doc Ock Spider-Man 2.
It's pizza time!
I'm excited to do this, actually.
Is that a quote?
Yeah, it sure is.
But that's next week. Today, it's the French Dispatch all day. So, David, what are you giving this Wes Anderson movie out of 10?
Pourquoi qu'il n'y a personne qui parle en français durant un film qui fait place en France? Zéro. No.
Zero?
Just kidding in English. French Dispatch is the perfect blend of all the things I love about Wes Anderson with some fresh touches that more than counteract what may be a little too much self-importance. If you like them, you'll love this. 8.8 out of 10. This is an awesome movie. I really fucking liked it.
It's a high-quality film. Riley.
Oh my gosh. Oh no. Wes Anderson has achieved his perfect dream of forming a hyperactive theater troupe capable of creating some of the most beautiful, detailed, and entertaining quirk ever witnessed in the world of cinema, at the cost of making me care about any of his characters. 6.5 out of 10.
Whoa!
Yeah, I know.
Damn.
Riley, I want to know. I think we're all going to agree that this movie has high rewatchability, and I want to know if your score is from the perspective of, on my first watch, this is how I enjoyed it, or is it taking in the perspective of, if I rewatch it multiple times, I'll probably eventually be at this score.
You want to know that right now?
I don't know. Just keep that in your mind, maybe.
Okay.
And I'll give you my slogan. While the French Dispatch is Wes Anderson as Franck in myriad delightful ways, the lack of an obvious narrative through line to unite its three vignettes, charming as they may be, robs the film of the sort of acceleration, ultimately leading to climax, that moviegoers expect, begging the question, is this really a movie? You see what I did there? I was like that Jeremy dude who reads good.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is each of the little vignettes is so cool, but the fact that there's three of them and they're separate and they don't have they're not one story that accelerates and builds together.
Yep.
Just like what you're saying, by the end of each one, I don't really care. And I just kind of lost interest.
Interesting. I really appreciate the high conceptness of this. And I'm surprised as writers, you guys didn't appreciate how it is just a magazine as a movie.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I definitely appreciate that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I really enjoy that. And I hear what you're saying. There's not a clear arc in terms of building to a sentiment or an idea, but I think the whole thing had me engaged because it feels so unique and special, and it accomplishes everything I think it went out to do. And I found myself, I'll admit, I fell asleep for about 30 seconds. I had one of those kind of getting sleepy.
A micro sleep.
Yeah, micro sleep, and I woke up and I'm like, all right. But it wasn't that I was bored. It was, I think it was overwhelming. And my brain was like,
it wasn't that you were bored?
No, honestly, it's like when you get enhanced and you watch a really crappy movie, and then it's for 30 minutes of Riley, you wouldn't know. For 30 minutes, you're like, this is the craziest thing ever. This is awesome. And then you're like, whoa, okay, I got to back up and I can't enjoy this anymore. And it just felt like that, where there was so much happening at me, where my brain was so overactive, and then I just couldn't handle it.
I want to talk about this point a lot more, actually. I was also enhanced, not as wavy as you, though, but I actually disagree that I think there probably is a thematic through line.
Well, thematic, sure.
But I got to watch it again to be able to comprehend it. But we'll talk more about that after this message from our sponsor, Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so that you can bypass your restrictions and censorship. You can connect up to 10 devices at once, and it includes an internet kill switch if your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. I did it for you, Riley. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even as a Chrome extension wherever this little dispatch of your Kansas magazine may reside. So check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolcritics. Okay. Can we are we all in agreement that the first vignette was the best one by far?
That's the biking through the town?
No. I mean the first story one. Well, the artist.
Yeah, I agree.
Benicio in prison.
That was by far my favorite one.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I would say the biggest thing that immediately endeared me to it was naked Lea Seydoux. I mean, come on. I was titillated.
You're disgusting. She's a sick actor, though.
She's really good.
I love when she slapped his hand and was like, whoosh. Get out of here. You're like, what is the dynamic between these characters? And then you find out that she's the guard. It was just like, what?
Yeah. It's a good little twist in the beginning, and you're just like, oh, okay.
I actually laughed out loud in the theater I laughed out loud in the theater many times this movie. I found it a very humorous movie, but I laughed out loud when there was not a joke in some of the opening frames, specifically that shot where it's like this, you're looking at the exterior of a building and you're seeing one of the characters go up all the different stairs.
Oh, I love that shot.
And I laughed out loud because I thought, yep, it's Wes Anderson. Here we go. Let's go. We're in his mind again. We're back.
Yeah. I appreciate that shot, though, because it's so long and it's kind of like a little bit self-indulgent, but it gives you enough that there's so much to take in, and like there's little jokes visually, like the last one, he climbs up the elevator and then all of a sudden the tray is like being carried up by a dolly, and like there's constantly information to take in with this movie.
Yeah, so in that sequence as well, some things are moving in real time. Like there's a dude sweeping and it's just chronological real time, but then the main character is like jumping. Like he's moving in physically impossible ways. So it speaks to what we're going to see throughout the entire movie, which is the verbose and eloquent voiceover is complex and stimulating enough that this could just be a radio movie and you could just be sitting there with your theater of mind, and that would be enough and occupy 80% of your CPU.
Yeah.
But then it's so visually rich that you could just turn off the audio and still be, like you said, titillated just watching the visuals. And then when you put these two together, like you said, David, I had about till the end of that first story in prison where I was just engrossed, and after that, I think I was just exhausted.
Yeah, it's kind of exhausting in a good way, but I think the more you watch it, the more the beginning would have less impact, and then you have more room for your brain to accept the later parts.
Not only that, but I think that the second story, the one with the university revolutionary students, was just harder to follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair.
Speaking of harder to follow, we should probably do the synopsis.
Yeah.
How can one synopsize?
Yeah, well, let's see.
You're going to try, hey?
When Arthur Howitzer Jr., the editor of a publication called The French Dispatch, dies, its employees prepare one final issue republishing 4 past articles, according to the instructions in Howitzer's will. In the first section, the cycling reporter, Herb Sazerac, David, I'm sorry, these pronunciations are not going to be accurate, describes the quaint French town of Ennui-sur-Blasé. In the second section, the concrete masterpiece, J.K.L. Berenson details the career of Moses Rosenthaler, a disturbed artist held in the Ennui prison for murder who creates abstract nude portraits of Simone, a prison guard who sleeps with him but does not return his declarations of love. A fellow prisoner, Julian Cadazio, convinces his family of art exhibitors to buy Rosenthaler's work and commission further pieces. But after waiting 3 years, Cadazio and a mob of fans bribe their way into the prison to discover Rosenthaler has painted more masterpieces on the concrete wall of the prison. A prison riot breaks out, and Rosenthaler helps stop it, so he's released on probation. Simone ends their relationship but maintains correspondence, and Cadazio airlifts the prison wall to a private museum in Kansas. In the third section, Revisions to a Manifesto, Lucinda Crements reports on a student protest in Ennui. Despite her desire for journalistic neutrality, Crements sleeps with one of the student's leaders, Zeffirelli, and helps him write his manifesto before encouraging him to put aside his disagreements with fellow revolutionary Juliet and go make love. Weeks later, Zeffirelli is killed trying to fix their pirate radio tower and becomes a symbolic martyr for the movement. In the last section, the private dining room of the police commissioner, Roebuck Wright recounts a dinner hosted by the commissaire of the Ennui police force and prepared by legendary police chef Lieutenant Nescaffier, during which the commissaire's son Gigi is kidnapped. The police surround the kidnapper's hideout, but Gigi sneaks out a Morse code message to send the cook. Lieutenant Nescaffier is sent to provide the criminals and Gigi with food secretly laced with poison, killing all the criminals and nearly Nescaffier himself when he is made to test it first. But one criminal, the chauffeur, escapes with Gigi, leading the police on a car chase until Gigi escapes out of the sunroof. Back at the dispatch office, Howitzer tells Wright to reinsert a removed sequence in which Nescaffier reveals the taste of the poison was unlike anything he had ever encountered. In an epilogue, the staff of the French Dispatch mourn Howitzer's death and set about putting together the final issue. Yeah, see, like that last scene where Nescaffier is like, "Oh, the poison, was unlike anything. It was the flavor was amazing," and that it felt almost like what I would want from like a climactic sort of emotional conclusion of something. But the thing is that we hadn't spent enough time with that character yet.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, this is really cool, but
well, and
I don't feel
it
anything.
came after that animated sequence, which I think was really cool because it was like
really
authentically
cool.
French or Belgian styled cartoon.
How about that guy in the leotard on the?
I love it.
Out of the car.
To me, that felt like it would be the perfect like midpoint refresher where it like kind of like resets your brain. You're ready for another story that might be more emotional. It didn't feel like the climax of the movie.
You thought the third story should have been the second story? Is that what you're saying?
I think just that specifically that animated section, because I agree. I think like that conversation with him on the hospital bed, recounting the flavor, is incredible. And you're right; it's like a perfect final realization, like the final moment of emotionalism or idea presented by the movie. But I think everything leading up to it didn't feel like the climax.
I agree with both you guys with Riley there, where you're saying that was a really cool thing to think about. The concept. Wow. Yeah. I guess poison. We don't really know.
Yeah.
Delivered by a character who is just about like he's in the background until we finally get to hear him speaking there, and so he's not a main character. We don't care about him. David, though, I disagree that is like the pivotal scene of the movie that's probably going to tell us what the movie is saying. Okay. I think that the scene that does that is when the final author is reading out the excerpt that he wasn't going to include.
Oh, sure, yeah,
but I don't remember what that said. Do you guys?
I don't remember.
Wait, no, that was the excerpt.
That is that, isn't it?
The bit about the flavor.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that
was originally. He didn't include that in the story, and then Howitzer Bill Murray tells him that's the best part of the piece, and he's like, I couldn't disagree more.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's great then. I don't disagree with you.
We all agree.
The thing is, guys, I'm just to go inside baseball. Watched this movie almost a full week ago, and I wish I had seen it twice before recording this. I'm sorry. That's just the nature of
too busy of a week. We couldn't make it.
But like,
production.
Okay, we're gonna get into why I think that's like. I feel like you guys value rewatchability more than me. To me, having to rewatch a movie is like I take points off for that. But other people obviously take it more because there's so much I have to rewatch it in order to experience.
Well, I think it depends on the reason why. It depends on the reason why you need to rewatch it. For example, something like Tenet, you got to rewatch it because the director did a poor job of communicating the movie to you. Whereas in this movie, you need to rewatch it because you can't keep up.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
But that's kind of like it's the same thing at the end of the day,
no,
right? Like you can appreciate one more than the other, but at the same time, I'm like, if you create a piece of art and it's meant to be sat down and enjoyed and experienced, to me, it's like if you don't get the point through, if you don't get the totality of it, or most of it, anyways, across in the first sitting.
I think he gets most of it through, whereas the Tenet, I don't think Tenet got most of it through.
When I think it's like that's such a, I don't like that point of view because it's like, okay, well, why do people study books? Like, why do you have to study a book? You don't get 100% of the ideas the first time through. It's the same with a movie. No, let me finish.
I get what you're saying.
Like a movie has to communicate something the first time. And I think this movie absolutely succeeds at communicating, for me, entertainment, but also a ton of ideas and a ton of feelings on the first watch. But there's so much density that every time I'll watch it after this, I'm going to get more. And it's become more layered and more rich. And I think that's the ideal movie for me, where the first time is great, and then it gets better and like more to it every time.
I think there's another element to it, which is the split between the narrative and the visual. Because as I was saying earlier, like it's because I am allocating some of my brain to just wanting to look at what's happening, and when I do that, what's being said kind of fades to the background, and so it's a greater failure if it's like I'm really focusing on what's being said and I still don't get it. That's Tenet.
Yeah,
it's a super ADHD movie.
Yeah, fair.
Like, I think that I get what both of you guys are saying in the sense that, like, if, the deeper something is and the richer something is, the more there is to experience in something, the better it is. And I think that there is an element of truth there. But I think that for me personally, I feel like I represent this person. I don't have a ton of free time. So, like, when I experience something and I feel like I missed a ton, which I did feel like when I watched this, because it's so packed and, like, on one level, I'm like, that's a testament to Wes Anderson's artistry that he can just like squish all of this stuff into an hour and a half. Is that how long it is? An hour and a half?
I think it was an hour 40, or
it was a little bit
something like that. Under 2 hours.
But it felt long though.
It's a short-ish movie. You can squish all that into there, but but because he's so good at doing that, I watch this movie and I'm like, when am I going to rewatch this? I don't have time for this.
Dude, your kid loves Wes Anderson. You're going to play this a million times.
Yeah. I guess although there was nudity.
I guess if I wanted to make him hyperactive. So much happening.
One of the things I really appreciate in this movie is the use of, I mean, the frame is always incredible, but the use of restraint and color, because one of the trademark Wes Anderson things is how he uses color. Like we praise Grand Budapest for all the different palettes, the different time eras had different colors, but this is black and white. And like there's moments of color, but I really appreciate how well framed it is, how like the mise en scène is absolutely incredible. But those moments of color I found were so impactful. Yeah. Like, and they can be simple frames, like the one where Timothée Chalamet is at the top of the tower and it's like talking and it's kind of like building towards like he's about to die. And then it goes from him like in the black and white, kind of almost cartoony frame to a more kind of majestic colored blue frame. And he seems kind of more further off, almost like a legendary moment. And what I found with those moments, it was almost like when the universe whispers to you and is like, this is a moment you will remember for the rest of your life. And it's like, take a second, like soak it in. And I've never experienced that quite in the same way in a movie, where a movie was like, take a second, soak this moment in and like create the memory. And I found that so incredible and such a cool reversal of what I expect from Wes Anderson.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful that a movie can make you feel like that, because usually it's because like someone's giving birth or something.
Yeah, totally. And you're like, I should remember this.
Yeah, you should hook me up with what you're smoking.
I definitely
wasn't. No, so to make clear, I wasn't enhanced for this movie. I knew that it was going to be too dense. I was tying it to other times I'd smoked
Oh,
weed.
okay. I didn't understand that.
Yeah,
I definitely.
Oh.
Yeah, I went to the. Yeah, I had a drink.
I definitely felt that with the color as well. Is it true that is it most of the movie was black and white, and then he had these little like accent shots of color?
The biking story and the kind of framing story were mostly in color.
I would
like
say
it was also aspect
runtime
ratios.
Yeah, well, he did the same thing with. He likes to have these complex framing devices, just like in Grand Budapest, where you had to like remember that this story is within a story within a novel that's being read. Yeah. And I think that's cool. It adds to it. It kind of makes it more stimulating, because you have to hold more in RAM. Where you're like, okay, this is a guy reading a story to a dude, so it's going to be in the magazine, and then this guy's about to die. It's all part of his obituary. Totally. I like that shit.
Yeah, my favorite part of that was the art story, where how it's Tilda Swinton giving a lecture, which will then become an article, which is being told to Harold, which will then be read, which is the movie.
Let's talk about the cast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
killed it in this one.
Tilda Swinton. She was like, I feel like she was the best part of this movie for me.
Her and Adrien Brody.
Oh yeah, he was pretty cool too, I guess. But like when she came on screen and started doing that American voice, I was just like, that's so funny. Like I've never heard her do.
She was so
an
delightful.
American character like
those
that.
Those like poses she was doing.
Yeah, it was so funny. It was like the what a fun character.
Yeah.
Like, what's the deal with when us in the slide that she prepared, there's suddenly her posing nude? Oops! Like, what does that say?
That's me. But she like stays on it like a little longer than you would think.
Sure.
The subtlety of it, though, because she really plays it like this actually a mistake, but the fact that it's in there and the fact that it holds on it, it's like clearly not a mistake. So
yeah,
it was just so, I don't know. It just says a lot.
I think maybe the idea is that she really sees herself as a participant in the story, and like the art is abstracts of nudes, and that's like, it's not an abstract of her nude, but she wants to include her body in the presentation of abstract nudity. Maybe like there's a way she's trying to connect herself to it.
Yeah, or it could be a commentary on journalists, how sometimes they would rather be in the field that they cover rather than just covering it.
Yeah,
That's
I
fair.
mean, it's the same kind of thing with Cremence. What's her name?
Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand's character, where she's like, "Oh, journalistic neutrality," but really, I'm sleeping with. Which is like that made me feel icky.
Whatever, it's like 20s France or whatever.
Yeah, anything goes. No, I mean that bothered me. I don't know, because he's like Timothée Chalamet is like 25, but he always plays these like boys, and I know these are supposed to be like university students, so it's like whatever. But that was
weird.
Made me feel
it was hilarious.
Too big.
I think I wrote down in my notes. I was like, "Who's this actor? This guy looks like Discount Chalamet." And then,
what are you talking?
And then like 10 more minutes passed. I'm like, no, that actually just is Chalamet.
You didn't know that was Timothée Chalamet?
He had certain angles. I just thought he looked a little different and sounded a little different, and then eventually,
well, he certainly did, and I think that's something that blew me away, and that I was really happy about was how different his performance here is from like Dune. I haven't seen him in a ton of other stuff, but obviously the immediate comparison is Dune, where he's like this stoic, very minimally acting character, and in this one he he's a lot more eccentric, and I really appreciate
liked him. I really liked him.
Yeah.
I think like there's like that story maybe is my least favorite, but there's such good moments. I love when Frances McDormand's friends are trying to hook her up with Christoph Waltz, and he comes in and it's like so clear like she has no interest, and then like she's so much more interested in the uprising, and that moment where like I can't remember if it's her or him, he has his jacket on, he like elbows her like let's go. I don't know, there's something about like the comedy him. Was that
she elbows him? Yeah,
that's like that's like such a real moment, and like there's so many little moments of like physicality that this movie has where it's just like they communicate so much what the dynamic of each character is in every fucking moment. Like I'm reiterating the idea that this movie is dense, but like it needs to be rated. Like this movie is so fucking dense, it's insane.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying now is that the density is like multi-dimensional.
Yes.
Where it's like there's physical aspects, there's just production design aspects, there's other visual aspects, there's the voiceover, which is written like an issue of the New Yorker.
I feel like that what you just talked about with the she bumps him with her elbow or whatever. I feel like that's something about Wes Anderson's style that I really love. He will like put in these little, they seem almost modern, sort of like what am I like the moment I'm thinking of in Grand Budapest is when the police show up to arrest Ralph Fiennes' character, and he's like, all right, you've never heard of the Van Hoytel in your life, all right? And he's telling Zero what to do when the police come, and he's like, all right, let's go. And it seems like a really like kind of modern contrivance, like because this is supposed to be happening in the early 20th century, and it's like doesn't seem like something that they would do. Okay, let's go. Like
it's almost it's similar to fourth wall breaking.
Yeah,
it's not.
No,
it's just like a little style inclusion that it is an anachronism, and so that's why I think it's interesting.
Well, speaking of time, did you guys pick up on a specific era? Because I had to look it up after. I'm like, what is the set? And apparently it's set spread out. It's between 1925 and 1967. So all the stories take place over different times. Did you guys pick up on that? Because I kind of just like didn't. I was just like, I don't know.
It wasn't terribly important to me.
Yeah.
You could tell from like the film set of when the author of the final vignette is like they're in a talk show kind of setting. You could tell that was like 60s, 70s looking.
Sure.
Yeah, I figured they were all kind of like early, mid, late century. Yeah. Early, mid, late century, you know, all of them. All the periods. But like up to like around the 70s. Yeah.
Well, we kind of glossed over the cast, but I want to get into that.
There's so many people.
It's insane. When you look at the poster, there's like 2 parts of artwork where it's a apartment that's split into a thing, and each one is like a huge star, and then there's a list of like 20 names, and you're like, you expect that to be the people. You're like, I'm not sure who that is, but it's like Christoph Waltz, like
Owen Wilson,
Saoirse Ronan, like these huge stars that are like big award-winning actors. And
who is she?
She's the leader. She's like the lady of the night from Showgirls, of the people that kidnapped Gigi.
Oh yeah.
But I think part of why this movie works so well is that people want to be a part of it. It's not like you work for Wes Anderson movies because like it's a good money opportunity. Like this movie's like $35 million or whatever. You do it because you want to be in it, and you give this thing your fucking all, and you see that on frame with the actors, but you see it on screen with every department: costumes, production design, lighting. Like everyone is giving this 120%.
Yeah, and I think it's a role it's outside of the blockbuster mainstream, right? Like you get to be these wacky, kind of really discerning characters, right? Like the kind of characters that like say Adrien Brody's character is. Like they're so particular. They come from such a particular realm and a particular mind. That you just don't get to be like, even when Chalamet plays Paul Atreides in Dune or something, like he's leading man. It's a huge movie, but it's not like off the wall and wacky. And if you want to be off the wall and wacky or kind of extend your range as an actor, you usually have to do something like a Daniel Radcliffe style, like kind of indie art house movie.
Totally, and so tiny that no one will ever see it, whereas Wes Anderson, you get to do these weird things and people will still see it.
Yeah, it's like the biggest art house movies.
Yeah.
That's why I called it like Wes Anderson has achieved his dream of a hyperactive theater troupe, because I feel like I listened to some interviews of actors who acted in this, and that's kind of what they described it as. It's like during the filming of this, they all lived in a house in France,
That's awesome.
The house had lots of like ladders and windows that were wooden. And
yeah, I forget. They filmed like the stand-in for ennui. The town was like, I forget what it's called. It's like Angoulême or something. But they lived in a house in this French town that doubled as ennui. And they like, while they filmed this movie, they were kind of like all part of this like, you know, theater group or whatever. And they were just like having meals together and hanging out. And it's like, it seems like to the actors, this is definitely just like an opportunity to come play with Wes Anderson and his crew, you know.
I mean, how do you want to spend your life? You know, if you have the option, that sounds like a great time, a great way to spend a couple months while working.
Well, I love the idea too that Wes Anderson is collecting actors for his movies, almost like Pokemon, where like he's before this movie, he's like, oh, like these are the people I really want to work with. Like he said, I've like put it on my list. Like I want to work with Benicio del Toro. I want to work with Jeffrey Wright, and like he just makes it happen. And
I have some questions about that because he has his typical cadre like Owen Wilson and Swinton. But so Jeffrey Wright and Chalamet and Del Toro, are they all first time?
I believe so.
Additions to the what do you usually call this? The WACU, the Wes Anderson Cinematic Universe.
They need to make
players.
They should make a Smash Bros game with
oh my god! No, Ray Fiennes in this one, like
Wes Anderson Smash Bros.
Yeah, he has like a cane and he hits you.
Wes Masterson, yeah, he gets an alternate costume that's just Voldemort.
I like Bill Murray in this one too because we just saw him in Ghostbusters where I was like, man, this guy's a little shriveled to be in movies. But in this, it was like
perfect.
Totally perfect.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Murray basically still exists on the earth at this point to play bit parts in Wes Anderson movies.
Well, what did you guys?
He'll never die for that reason. That's where his life force is derived from.
As writers, what did you guys think of those scenes? Because we don't get too much of him giving feedback to the writers, but like I felt like they seemed really real, the kind of feedback he would give and the way they took it, and they're kind of like, but they were communicating well, and I don't know, it felt really
It really conveyed the relationship,
the
artistic relationship, where it's like, I'm the gatekeeper of this magazine and its voice, but it really is nothing without the authentic perspective of its writers, and there's always that push and pull of like, well, this is me and this is what I want to put in. It's like, well, that might be a bridge too far, and then they have to do that dance every time. And so they really conveyed that well. I like that.
I have a couple thoughts about that device. One, that I think it highlights the importance of having like a raw creative type and then people who can rein them in when they go off the rails. Like I really liked having these writers and have their own style or whatever, and then we show Howitzer being like, how about you do this? Why'd you do this? Blah, 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 and kind of like refine it, and because that's how you get the best creative stuff. And two, I liked how, as we said, Wes Anderson really loves these framing devices where it's like it's a story within a story within a story. And we had a similar framing device here. And I think it was even more appropriate here than in Grand Budapest or some of his other stuff, because this is, I mean, the thing that connects these three stories is the idea of storytelling and saying something about how stories are told and how different voices are put in and stuff. So I really appreciated those elements.
Yeah. I mean, he set out when he started to write this movie to basically celebrate the spirit of journalism and certainly the New Yorker. And I think that comes across. I've never really like read a full issue of the New Yorker. I've seen the articles, seen the covers or whatever, but that comes across so well. And apparently the characters are based on specific people or like an amalgamation of a couple people.
Yeah, I believe that. I used to, I think actually my roommate subscribed to it, so I have some experience with the magazine. And there was, I think I maybe listened to a podcast before with one of the longtime editors, and she was just talking about the politics of commas. And so they didn't really touch on that in this movie, except for just a little bit when they're in Bill Murray's office, and then there's that one character who is just summarizing all the grammatical errors that were found. Like she lists them off, like, oh, there was 25 improper semicolons or whatever it was. It's just it's technical writing jargon, but it actually is at that level, and there are people working there who think like that, and I just like that they just had that little dash was in there.
Even that one frame, I think it's Elizabeth Moss character who's like the grammatical, like the focused one, and she's just there and she has like the flow chart of the sentence and like I was like, that's pretty sick. I really like that.
I loved also the culture of the editor-in-chief, like the hallowed founder of it, and the no crying above his and even in his death when that one character is like starts breaking down, they're like, hey, no crying.
No crying.
Because his legacy's gonna live on even as this collapses.
Yeah, Yeah, he's in like the prison at the end in the bird coop or whatever, and he starts crying because he gave him the job, and Howitzer's like, no cry, or don't cry, or something.
I love it.
He's got one rule.
There's so many good moments in this movie. Like like what about that part where there's just, like his sense of humor, like the inexplicable, very detailed things that don't matter. That's basically like Wes Anderson in a nutshell is like a ton of detail on a trivial thing, like a random gang of choir boys chasing people off the streets. Yeah. I was just laughing my ass off.
Good.
Oh, okay. See, that stuff is good. I like that. I think that's that adds something to the ambiance, you know, especially because we have these three main stories, and then like the cycling reporter bit in the middle is in the beginning is like a little intro. It's a shorter intro to the town, and I thought all that extra stuff was really great. But I'm also really, really annoyed, especially in a movie this short and this dense, by extra details that are probably meaningless. But it's like the thing I'm thinking of is in the first story, one of the Cardassio uncles is like looking at the frescoes on the wall in the prison, and there's a guy behind him massaging his shoulders as he's watching it. And so that's just distracting to me. Like it's a fun thing, and I can see that, like, I don't know, maybe they were on set and they were just like, you know what? This would be funny if this guy is just massaging him while this happens.
I love that. No, I love that.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough. But at the same time, I'm like, who's that guy? Why is he? Is there something? What's going on here?
No, that's just because.
Like, but I think an element of that story is like how power works. Oh no, but I disagree. Like I think that it's communicating something.
It's world building.
It's world building, and it's character building, and it's doing something. It's not just like random. I don't think it was. Yeah, I don't think it's just it's there for a reason.
Building? I mean,
it's building the character who's being massaged.
Right. I just want to know.
Yeah, it's like a power dynamic, and it's like he's so powerful that he has like someone just to massage him, and like
the excesses of the art world.
Yeah.
Have you ever read any David Foster Wallace, Riley?
I have not.
Okay.
But I'm sort of familiar with his work.
You should. Not Infinite Jest. You should read like that Lobster anthology book of short stories, in particular the one about a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again when he goes on a cruise. It's basically the same thing where it's like it's kind of like stream of consciousness minutia, just like really poignant observations about weird things around you, and just like going into the details and like having paragraphs long footnotes about things that may not matter. It's very. Wes Anderson is really similar to that. And
see, but like,
I highly recommend
what's
it.
interesting to me, like in terms of like my own psychology, is like that's kind of, I love that stuff. Like going through life in my own experience, I love looking at all those little minutiae and like finding humor in like little tiny things that maybe no one else notices, like people watching or whatever. I love it. But when I'm watching a movie, and I'm looking for more of like a through narrative, maybe I just came in with the wrong attitude. Actually, I wrote this down as a very early on in the movie. I'm like, this is the type of movie I almost don't want to analyze. I just want to experience it. And maybe part of my annoyance with it is knowing that I have to analyze it. Like I'm going to have a discussion about this. I'm going to have thoughts.
But you don't want to? I want to.
For a movie like this, I just want to sit down and like maybe the fact that I will have to rewatch it in order to pick up on more things is less irritating.
Are you quitting?
To me.
I'm done.
Are you quitting the podcast?
No, I'm saying like a short, fast-paced movie like this is, especially one as dense as this is, as you say, you know, it's best experienced just kind of like enjoying the ride, and then maybe you'll watch it later and you'll pick up on more things. But like as I'm watching these movies, like preparing for the podcast, I'm like trying to pick up on things so that I can say something interesting.
There's so much to pick up on.
And it's irritating.
Sure.
I want to talk about the experience of watching this, because I actually had a thought while watching that I thought, this is such a different experience, sensory experience, lived experience, whatever kind of experience, than watching Shang-Chi. Or like or any other like cheeseburger. This is just so different. It's miles away from that. Like the places my brain is going are completely like different neural pathways than when I'm watching the latest blockbuster.
Yeah.
And I love that, and it's a shame. People talk about this all the time, that what we are served is so often kind of all in the same realm.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that like we just don't have a greater diversity of awesome art like this that is just elsewhere.
Well, it's crazy because this is really, it's not just a love letter to the New Yorker, it's a love letter to the French New Wave. And so that was in response to like a really shitty mainstream era of cinema where it was like stories we'd already told. It was basically like instead of the comic book era, it was like the literature brought to movie era, and it was all the same fucking movies. It was boring. It was like just these experiences that were mindless.
Yeah, it's because the studios are super low risk and conservative.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like they know that if they take a known property and make it a movie, that'll sell. And so I love that this movie exists now, where we're desperate to break free from the fucking Marvel shackles and all these things. And I think it's so refreshing.
On the one hand, it's the opposite of the decision to make a new Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Which tried and true. But it is also a tried and true director.
For sure.
So it's another Wes Anderson.
And even the fact that like the French New Wave was bold and new and different, and it like set what films would be like. And that's the start. Like that's the inspiration for the new Hollywood, which was kind of like the golden era of American filmmaking. But this isn't new. It's like a Tarantino movie. It's taking old things and kind of repackaging them for a new audience. And like, I fucking love this movie. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's almost like, even though this movie's trying to like break us free from our blockbuster overlords, it also is feeding into our inability to create new art.
Sort of. I mean,
that's
it's a
the same
loving
thing.
tribute, right? Like, it's as you say, it kind of is inspired clearly by these historical movements and stuff, and I think that it's I thought it was a beautiful tribute. Like, I can see that it's taking from that while also appreciating that, like, you know, this is the stuff that made Wes Anderson's, like, a lot of it really informs Wes Anderson's style in a lot of his other movies too. It's like he kind of went back to his roots here, quote unquote.
Yeah, well, it's a process we can't really break free from, because the majority of art is imitative. Then once in a while you get an auteur who's original. Let's say it's Wes Anderson, but the first Wes Anderson movie is very different from this Wes Anderson movie or Grand Budapest. It takes that auteur time, or that artist time, to reach their final form. Yeah. And in that time, because it takes time, it's like you're creating, there's going to be all this imitative stuff in that duration, right? So it's like, you can't just bank on there being, oh, there's a new original person and they're making their best thing immediately. Yeah. No. So I think it's just like, this system is like the fact that we have the stuff that's all the same. It seems like it's all the same. Even you said the French New Wave was awesome, but eventually even all of it is imitating it's self-imitative. That is part of the process. It's a double-edged sword. We can never be divorced from that.
Fair.
I think that, like, this is kind of this movie is exactly what you want to see from creative people, where it's like, okay, we all acknowledge there's nothing new under the sun, you know, fundamentally, but what we can do is take what exists and kind of recombine them and mix them and make something cool, and giving you like snapshots of a bunch of different things. We were wondering before we saw this movie why it wasn't a limited release, and because Wes Anderson is a big name director. He's done things that a lot of people are familiar with, but this was like a limited release. It wasn't in all the theaters, and while watching the movie, I was like, oh, I get it now. Because like most people, this is not for wide audiences.
I think
this is like for the people who are looking for this more like autistic thing. Artistic is what I said there.
I think you just wanted to control the numbers, because in the last year and a half, people have been having to be reevaluating what is success. How do we measure success?
Right. Yeah,
the box office. It used to be just pure box office in the first weekend, and then 40 days after that, whatever, or internationally. And now it's like, well, it's partially box office, it's partially the Disney Plus sales. How do we know if something is good? Yeah. And so I think he controlled that by being like, well, no one's going to be able to say it didn't perform well because it performed maximally in the small like the theaters I put it in.
Yeah. And I think it seems to have been an excellent strategy, because the buzz around it really was big. And like, you look at the usual things that people are looking at to know if they want to go see a movie, like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, and the scores aren't particularly high. It has like 75% on the critic side of Rotten Tomatoes and like 75% on the audience side. But like, there's a buzz about this movie, and people are excited to see it.
I think it's gonna have a legacy. I think it's gonna have staying power
for sure. And I mean, like, you don't think so? I think that.
Well, this kind of brings it back to what we were talking about in the beginning, where it's like, where's the emotional impact? Because I think that the real thing that makes people want to rewatch movies a lot is if they make them feel things. You know, I watched Lord of the Rings a million times, and Star Wars used to a lot. Because I would watch it and be like, yeah, let's go. I feel sweat breaking out of me. I feel tears bursting out of my eyes.
I think those are just different things. That is a type of feeling. Like, this movie makes me feel things, but it's just more cerebral.
Emotions, though? It's a cerebral thing, right?
It's cerebral, but I don't think that we need to say that those are I think those are different buckets on the same tier of the hierarchy, whereas you're saying like feel things is in the emotional tree and it's its own thing, and if it doesn't have that, then it's not good.
Well, I would differentiate between a movie made me feel things and a movie made me think about things.
But I think
this one made me feel stimulated and made me laugh.
It definitely did feel stimulating, but I don't know if I felt emotions.
I feel like I felt emotions at certain moments. Like I previously talked about the moments of color. I felt like some deep sense of like connection to this story in like a totally unique and emotional way. I hear what you're saying, but I think that like I'm not tired of it, but it's so easy for a movie to pull on those same emotional heartstrings. And I think they start to become repetitive, like heroic sacrifice and like brotherhood. And there's like a lot of those same things. And I think this movie, for me personally, pulled on, like made a connection between my brain and my heart that affected me. And maybe it's not something I'm used to feeling in a movie. So maybe it didn't feel as like emotionally deep, but it felt emotionally complex. And I did feel watching
But I
this
think
movie.
Riley will agree with me in saying that those were moments that came in flashes.
True.
Whereas something like Lord of the Rings, it's build up, and by the time you get to Aragorn saying that you bow to no one after 3 movies, it's like
no, that's fair. That's fair.
I think the example that I would bring up as like, for me anyways, I know that not everyone had this experience, but for me, the movie that made me think more than I expected to think and also feel deeply was Soul, Pixar's Soul, because it has all those, more basic, human elements of like, loss, thinking about destiny, or like whether you are missing out on things, and like emotions and relationships and saying no to things. And then also like these deep things about meaning and what happens after we die and all this stuff, So it like made me think about the like more philosophical things, and it also made me feel deep emotional things.
Sure.
And I feel like that to me is like a perfect movie or the ideal mix. And for this, it was a lot more of like, okay, I'm thinking about emotions, I'm thinking about human experience things, but it's not making me feel a human experience as much as something with a through line, a plot that goes through with consistent characters, and I go on this journey, and then the journey ends, and I feel like I've gone on that journey as well.
I was touching on in my synopsis, which is like, or in my slogan, there's no real build, because it's like the story resets every 40 minutes, or I guess they were way shorter than that. Every half an hour,
30 minutes, sure.
It resets, and you're back to new characters and stuff like that. So there's no building. Like, not only is there a through line in a normal movie that just has one protagonist, but the story should be accelerating. Yeah. It's not even linear. Like, it should be getting crazier and crazier, or more dramatic, or more evocative as it goes. And this one doesn't. It just keeps resetting, and then it's fun at the end, but no more fun than it was at the beginning.
I think, though, like, it's definitely valid to perceive that as a weakness, but I think that's something that makes this movie have its own identity. And because it's so high concept, I appreciate that. I guess in this through line of emotionalism of what we're trying to discuss here, yes, it's a weakness, but I really do like just like how this movie connects and is so unique. Like, there's nothing like it.
Right, but check this out. It's maybe only a weakness in the context of it being a movie, which is why in my slogan I said, is it a movie? Yeah. Would this have been better as 3 episodes on a streaming service?
I was wondering that too.
I feel like if this was like a mini series with maybe 1 or 2 more episodes,
like the Coen brothers did with that Buster whatever one.
But that was like a movie though. That movie
wasn't that episodes?
It's almost the same. It's an anthology movie. They might have split it up after.
Right.
That is way worse. And
it sucks.
It's the problem with anthology things, and this one suffers from it a little bit, is that some of your stories are better and some are worse. It's like Buster Scruggs. There was like 1 or 2 stories. I'm like, this is pretty good, and then there's stories you're like, I don't fucking give a shit. And this doesn't suffer from that quite as bad, but like we reset each time, and like I think that we all agree the strongest story was like the first main story, and then you never kind of reached quite the same heights, and so you finish the movie feeling a little bit let down because you reached a high and you're hoping to get higher each time, but you don't.
But I wonder if how much like the first story being the best, is that because we saw it first?
It's quite possible.
I think it probably is the best, like by many measures. I'm not going to say the word objectively because that doesn't make sense here, but probably most people would agree it's their favorite. But I think the fact that the order bias, or what is it called? There's the thing I just heard about this.
Recency bias?
No, it's not that one.
Opposite,
there's like a
primacy bias.
No, there's a fatigue that happens where the Encyclopedia Britannica, when it first came out, was 3 volumes, and the first volume covered letters A to B.
Oh.
And then people were like, wow, this making an encyclopedia really is a lot of work. And so then they did fewer and fewer entries for every letter. And then so, the third, you're doing like 15 letters in the third volume versus just 2 because you kind of just, you kind of peter out in your attention span. So I think if you did this episodically, I would tune in the next night into episode 2, and I might like it even just more. As much or even more, because in a film like this, you need so much brain power to really absorb it.
Yeah. For me, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying there were no emotional parts, because I think there are definitely, like we said, there are some highlights, with these moments of color that we see. I think that another one for me was when Liev Schreiber's character, who is also in this movie, the interviewer in the talk show, asks Jeffrey Wright's character why he writes or why he, I forget what he says, but he asks him why, and then Wright says, you should never ask a man why. But then he's like, oh, because I'm on the spot or whatever, I'm going to ask it. And he said, writing is a way to share something with others, when like his entire life as a writer, as a journalist, is sort of solitary. He's going to cafes, he's going to these things and kind of thinking about these things by himself and writing. And then sharing them with other people is sort of like the more social aspect of that. And I'm butchering the whole delivery of it, but it was like it was sort of an emotional, intellectual moment for me. And that's where things kind of got up to a level where I would appreciate it. And I think I would just appreciate it so much more if it was like a consistent plot line. But those moments are there, is what I'm saying.
Fair.
And if this was more of like a self-contained, episode in a miniseries or whatever, maybe that would work better for me. But
I feel like there was an effort put into the structure of like trying to like ease us into it, because like there's like kind of the prologue, which is setting up the full structure, but then even like the first story, the bike story, it feels like it's it's like the opening song on an album where it's like it's giving you what you want. It's like, this is Wes Anderson, and it's color and it's building, and then by the end of it they introduce the idea of black and white, and then it's like the end of the song is like, here's what this album is now. And I feel like that it was, the effort was there, and I wonder if there's a way to reorganize the stories, or if it is what it is. But I don't know, I appreciate the effort.
I think they're organized. I think they're organized because they know which one's the best and which one's the worst, and everybody in Hollywood knows that if the ending is good, it doesn't matter if it sucked before. That's why like the third story is the second best one, and it has an exciting ending. And so as long as you walk out of the theater with a good taste in your mouth, you're going to enjoy it. It's similar to experiments where like something, if it's more painful, like you'll endure more pain overall if it like petered out at the end. Yeah. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
I think that's what I was going to say when we were talking about whether the animated sequence should have been in the middle as like sort of a refresher. I was like, oh, it makes sense that they put it at the end, because it's like, I was actually surprised. I'm like, whoa, there's like a shootout and a car chase in this movie. It's like, these are things, I expected that to be more of like an action movie or something, but we basically have this like exciting action sequence, and it's at the end of the movie for a reason, as you say.
Silly Wes Anderson action sequence where all the police have funny hats and little mustaches.
Apparently it took like 7 months to make that animated sequence, so they might have also
great.
It was really cool, and it felt very
like
authentic.
Tintin or something.
Well, that's what the main inspiration was Tintin.
Right.
Yeah, that's
because the place they shot at Ingenue is an area that's known for its comics. And I didn't really know that, and so like they wanted to honor Ingenue. Even
they
though
got
it's
people
set up
locally.
As Henri,
when that leotard guy is jumps out of the building that he previously crashed into and back onto the car, that was peak silliness.
I love it. I feel like one thing, maybe we did talk a little bit about it, but like this movie is funny. Like there are lots of points where I like laughed out loud, because it's just. I mean, Wes Anderson obviously has this like quaint quirkiness going on in all of his movies, even the like more serious ones like Grand Budapest. But this one is like, it's all turned up, especially because they're like little sketches, basically, right? Yeah. They're like little SNL sketches, and it was. I laughed out loud
so much in this movie.
Let's get into hit picks.
One of them.
Yeah.
Let's get into hit picks and nitpicks. Cue the song.
Down, gonna hit you with my picks.
I haven't talked to you about this, but we were thinking we should have actually like a stinger,
that'd be
like music that we put in for this section.
Audience, if you want to make one for free, well, thank you.
Do a Brian the Electrician version of it.
My first hit pick is the where did it go? I lost it mentally. It's gone.
I want to appreciate the name of the town, Henri-sur-Blazy. It's great. It means like what, boredom on boredom on indifference, which is really cool. I appreciate that. Oh, also I want to point out that the newspaper isn't called the French Dispatch. It's called like the Kansas Herald or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is the French Dispatch of the Kansas Sun.
I wanted
to
clarify this because I was so confused the whole time because I don't understand how this works. Like foreign bureaus of other newspapers, like the French, because they're based in Ennui, right?
This Dispatch.
The Dispatch is, but the mother newspaper is in Kansas.
But this is what I'm confused about. Do people in Kansas get the French Dispatch?
Yeah. They're a satellite office that writes articles and sends them back to the
But then people in Ennui also get it?
I don't know.
Probably not. Unless they really want it.
So
I don't know.
There's this newspaper centered in the town that is about Ennui mostly, but then people in Ennui aren't reading it. People in Kansas are reading it. I don't understand how this works. I'm an internet boy.
Yeah, it's not. You're not supposed to think too much about that part, I don't think.
Well, I'm sure it makes sense if you actually.
Because the New Yorker isn't. That's why I was also confused, because the New Yorker is the New Yorker. It's like, oh, we're centered in New York. Most of our stories are about America and like New York specifically. But then this is like, it's a Kansas newspaper with a French.
I think it's just Wes Anderson combining two things that he loves. It's not that it's like the New Yorker specifically in that aspect where they had a French Dispatch, but I think it'll
make more sense on the rewatches.
Well, but the French Dispatch covers things that, like it covers the politics in Europe, like what's going on philosophically over there. It covers the art world. It makes sense to cover that from Europe. What's the other story? It covers the travel and food.
Yeah.
So like
That's
the
fair.
Owen Wilson character is a travel blogger, travel writer. So it makes sense to have that Dispatch.
That's fair.
So funny that our language is now. We call someone from the 1920s a travel blogger.
You.
That's what they were. It just wasn't a blog per se.
Oh, here's my hit pick that escaped me. When they did the passage of time by showing the actors tag each other out, and it goes from Benicio del Toro comes in, just pats him on the shoulder and takes his seat.
I know.
That was awesome.
Well, because I love it because it takes a second to like understand what's going on, and then you're like, oh.
I was like, I'm pretty sure that actor is the old version of that actor. Is that what's happening right now? It is. Okay, that's very cool.
I do have a nitpick about both of those actors is the growl. I don't know, the growl took me out of it a bit when they both like, they're seeing the guy getting like harassed, and I guess Zero is that's when he kills them.
Yeah,
and he was like
Tony Revolori.
I guess that's supposed to just show like like he actually is insane.
For sure. And like it's not horrible, but I did find that was a moment that was a bit distracting.
A nitpick for me was there was a scream. I think it was Adrien Brody at one point just goes like, with his hands on his face, and I thought that was a little wacky.
Oh, big hit pick is those like moving tableau or like this like the still lifes when it's like these incredible framed like everyone's just holding the pose, and like you can see everyone like shifting a little bit.
Flash mob,
but then the camera would do its dolly sideways and like switch tableaus as it would go. They were all incredible, and I honestly think that the movement really added so much character to it. It was cute.
I think it's intentional, actually.
That's fair. It looks like almost like they're trying to like move a little bit.
He wasn't trying to make it seem like they were frozen. He wanted to know the effort that they were all going.
It was awesome. I loved every single one of those so much.
Fantastic.
This is like sort of a larger. Well, a medium pick. I always do these. I don't
like your medium picks.
Yeah. Medium picks, but it's just I just wanted to address because I didn't get a chance to like David, your thing in the beginning where you were like you fell asleep because you were overstimulated, and at first I was like, oh yeah, sure, but then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense actually, but that's also kind of the reason why I felt almost inclined to like turn my brain off at certain points because everything is so overstimulating. There's so much happening at once. You kind of just want to stop trying to analyze everything.
Yeah.
It's like clipping. So it's like the microphone is clipping or your HDR is clipping.
And you just kind of like there's so much noise that you kind of need to like reduce some of the background noise to clear out, make the real signal clearer. So I can understand you kind of wanting to like like psychologically, your brain being like, I need to check out for a second because there's lots going on.
I can't handle it, so I have to shut down.
This movie will have to be on streaming fairly soon. I don't think it'll have a super long theatrical run. It's already been in theaters for a couple months.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be in like a couple weeks. It's on streaming.
Yeah, I imagine after the first main story, I'll just pause it, make dinner or something, and then come back to it, and I'll appreciate it so much more, have so much more brain capacity to absorb.
I mean, like I had stuff to say about the actual themes And like I wanted to say things about like the student revolution and how that's portrayed in the second story, but like we don't have time to get to that.
No, tell me.
Oh well, but that's not nitpicks or hitpicks.
We can go back.
It's a medium pick, Riley.
I love how the film treats the students' cause as like sort of respectable and serious, while making it also very clear that it's like a silly thing. Like students come up with these like grand revolutionary ideas, and they think that they are like, oh, we need to fight against this horrible like oppression and blah blah blah. And at the end of the day, the grown-ups come in and they're just kind of like, yeah, you got to grow up at some point.
You basically, you two just need to fuck.
Yeah, like, this is the time of your life when you're experimenting. You need to learn these things. Like, go make love. Revolutions are a cool and a fun idea, but grown-ups know that, like, okay, we have to kind of calm down when you grow up a little bit.
It's a yin yang thing where it's like the older people, the older generation respects the young people. They understand it's part of the process that they need to have their turn and do their thing now. But we also acknowledge that with hindsight, these same individuals will look back at what they're doing and go, oh, okay, that was kind of dumb.
You're going to go make barricades in the street when you're young. That's fine.
I like that because I didn't realize that was based on a real revolution.
Oh, was it?
A real protest where it started, the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that they didn't allow the boys into the girls' dormitory.
Oh, that was real?
That's a real thing. And so they started a big student protest, and it ballooned out of that.
It must have to do with the sexual revolution.
Yeah, and it was more about like being treated like children, and they were sick of being treated like children, even though they were university students. And so I like that in this movie. That I thought that I missed what the revolution was about. Like I didn't really get it, but like that's the point. Is like it's not really about anything. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, it was. It was fun.
No. I didn't talk much about that third story, but I liked it.
Tim Chalamet plays that like angry but interested young kid. Really, really.
I didn't get the chess angle, or what his role on the revolutionary team was.
I didn't understand why they were playing chess all the time. I get that the chess board at the end was used as sort of like a proxy for discussions with the government, but
sure.
I don't know why they were playing chess at first.
Maybe it's just like literally the simplification. Instead of having them talk, it's just have them play chess. So it's like it's just a metaphor, but it's more stated.
Yeah, it's just a visual way to think about how the two parties are interacting. That's cool.
Big hit pick for me, the cover of each story. I thought they were so lovely, and like they're so simple, and it'll usually be like you can see the cover or like the little portrait of the person with a bit of their article. And I found like it communicated the story. It got me excited about what the story was going to be. Like just that little visual, I love.
And it had that literary through line.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, I loved all the little the covers at the end when they showed the drawn covers of the magazine.
Yeah,
the illustration style. I love that illustration style. It's so like, I don't know, quaint, for lack of a better term.
And that's very familiar as a New Yorker thing, for sure.
Yeah. And each drawing had like a little joke in it. Like there were like adults on a kid's playground or something. You know, it's like a little. It's quirky.
Yeah. Well, it's just another thing. Like the artist that did it really put his 120% in. He didn't like make art. He was like, he wasn't given an assignment and he did it. It's like he went out of his way to make it special.
Yeah.
Way to assume his gender.
Whoa. I guess I connected it to Jason Schwartzman's character, who's the artist in the movie, but it might not be.
Yeah, sure, dude. You're freaking canceled.
I am.
You're toxic. It's because he speaks French.
That to the
gendered language.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. In the news right now.
Also, Jason Schwartzman. I was like, is that Jason Schwartzman?
Mm-hmm.
But it was he was like a little. He put on a bit of weight or something, or maybe it was just the hairdo or something. Maybe. He looked like thicker than he does normally with 2 C's.
Yeah, the answer to that question in a Wes Anderson movie is always yes. It is Jason Schwartzman.
He's great.
Was that Jason Schwartzman?
Yes,
it was.
Yeah, my biggest hit pick is that the rumors weren't true. This wasn't a post World War II musical. That would have been great. That was the rumor, was that this was a musical, and I actually didn't really realize it wasn't until I went in, and I was so glad it wasn't. I was not feeling that.
Oh, you thought it was a musical? Interesting.
Yeah, Timothy
is
Chalamet
is Belfast a musical?
I don't think so. It might
Someone
be.
said it was. From the trailer, there's no indication that it's a musical.
What are you talking about?
Not to me.
Pretty sure it is.
Belfast?
Did you guys see it?
No, but if you look at the West Side Story trailer, like that's a musical.
Yeah.
You watch the Belfast trailer right after, like that just looks like a period drama.
But I think it's more of like a gritty reboot of a musical type of situation where there's like probably musical numbers, but it's
Belfast
less Belfast.
Oh, slow.
Oh.
Anyways,
next week,
Riley, do you have hit picks, nitpicks?
Oh no, I think that's pretty much it.
That's all you got? You got that silly mustache. You kind of are a Wes Anderson type character.
That's all I want in my life. What I've aspired to be.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Thank you for seeing the movie and talking to me about it.
I want to see it again.
Just made it sound like that was my show when I said that.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me about it. Thanks to you for coming.
I didn't mean it like that. I just mean I love you guys.
Yeah.
It's been a good year. You know, we're not. We had our Christmas party last night, so it feels like it's New Year's right now, and we have to do like wrap ups and stuff. There's still another 1/12 of 2021 to go.
Yeah, I just feel like there's no markers to differentiate. And it just marches on.
Well, that's we have seasons of this show. We're in season 2. Did you know that?
Do we?
Yeah, we're in season 2 since we got this set, and we've almost been doing this podcast for 2 years. You know that?
That's crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in the spring it'll be 2 years.
And did you know this? No, actually, we started in November, I think.
Has the carpool reached their destination yet?
No.
Oh, I guess we started in November, but we launched on YouTube in the spring.
Something like that. And there's so much more coming this year. There's another Spider-Man.
Because they're just movies now?
Yeah, we changed our name and changed the set at the same time. But still remaining in 2021 is a new Matrix and a new Spider-Man movie.
And we have to watch 2 old Spider-Mans, or 1 old Spider-Man, 1 old Matrix.
Yeah, we're watching Spider-Man 2 next week. We're going to watch Matrix 3 the week after, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm actually so excited. I wasn't that excited for the, what's the new Spider-Man called? No Way Home. I hadn't seen the second one in that series until the weekend.
No Way Home.
I actually loved it. The one with Mysterio. I thought it was a great Spider-Man movie.
Hell yeah.
I'm excited for the new one. I wasn't excited for Matrix 4 until we watched Reloaded. We'll see what happens after.
Might dampen that.
Resurrections may dampen that, but overall, I'm stoked for what's going to happen in the holiday season here, guys.
Stoked to watch these. Stoked to watch these horrible, basic ass, uncreative Marvel stories.
To go back into the mainstream hero myth movies.
I mean, one thing I didn't get to say earlier was that I used to think of these things as like low art and high art, but now I'm like, they're just different aspects of the human experience.
They're just movies.
And when there's too much basic Marvel stuff, you need a Wes Anderson. When there's too much basic, or when there's too much complicated, high art stuff, you need some Marvel stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, we need it all. Just like different foods. Anyways, watch Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire and Dr. Otto Octavius. Watch that. Then listen to our podcast. That's next week. And email us about it, guys. You can email us your questions ahead of time, too. Stuff that you want to see us talk about in the next episode. So email us. It is, what is it? hello@therejustmovies.com. You can tweet at us at TJMPod. And you can attach little letters to the feet of doves and just throw them out your window if you so desire. We won't get them, though.
It'll be the first time. I'll send that email right now.
Okay,
bye-bye.